Is that better?
Yeah.
So I walked home from the office.
Sorry, I'm just actually going to trigger your slides.
You're gonna,
Just trigger that.
So I walked home from the office, and then a bridge fell down on the highway. I tell you, it's chaos out there. I'm hoarse. I haven't eaten. I had a whiskey, which I don't usually have. Ron, thanks for that. I'm kind of on my ear here. I want to talk personally about kind of transformation in a personal sense. Some of you I see have heard me before. I tell the same story wherever I go. I'm kind of a one-trick pony because I believe what I'm saying, right? And to an extent, I'm very proud. Martin and I, Genesis and Discovery, have worked together for now, I think, decades, Martin. Decades, and I think together we built an amazing future, I think, for our customers and for people generally, and I'm remarkably proud of our relationship. So Martin asked me to speak today about transformation. I kind of have interpreted in a way. Are you going to just? So let me keep talking. I've interpreted in a way around personal success. And I see some of my friends that I've spoken before. You'll have to sit through this again, and I'd like to tell you the story once again. And what I'd like to share with you is what creates transformation in a personal sense. I really enjoyed Vicker's speech. This is quite an evening. I've jumped over cars, I've got people,
Now you're walking to work tomorrow as well. And then you're walking back tomorrow.
Absolutely. I want to tell you, we live in a beautiful city. Walking home in the evening, it's a wonderful thing. In a suit, you look a bit ridiculous. I saw people kind of staring at me, but nonetheless, who cares? So, I want to talk about individual success and transformation in a very personal way. And there's nothing new about this. I can tell you this. There's nothing I'm going to tell you you don't know. These are observations I've made over the years, observations that have come from a lot of research about what makes people successful. And to an extent, this has come from our organization. Yeah, it's fine. I'll stand here. I want you to go sit down. I'm only kidding. So, these are observations that are personal, that come from work we've done at Discovery about trying to understand what makes people successful, what makes them transform in a way. As I say, nothing I will tell you tonight you don't know. Many of you have heard this before, but I'd like to kind of get through it and give you a sense of what makes people change, what makes them successful. And at the outset, it's important I say success is not about making money. It may be in a social sense, it may be in a family sense, being a better spouse, being a better parent. And to an extent, Discovery's been built on this understanding, or trying to understand the fact that people are largely irrational. We're learning more and more from behavioral economists that we don't make rational decisions. Classical economics is built on the idea that people act in a rational way, but they don't. We have bias, we have prejudice, we have all kinds of codings, genetic codings around kind of what makes us make decisions. And I've chosen three things I'd like to talk about if I can work that out. And I've called this talk kind of Fooled by Linearity. Excuse the mathematical bias, but I believe that one of the things we make deep mistakes about is believing that things are linear. They're a straight line. They're uniform. And that makes us make the wrong decisions. And to an extent, in three areas, I think that we make tragic mistakes, and these impede us from success. So these are my observations, quite a bit of research in it, quite mathematical. I hope I don't bore you to death, but I want to try and get through this. And the three areas are our understanding of time, and how we see time, and how we feel time. Tragic error. We think it's forever, but it's not. The second is utility. How we perceive losses and gains, and what we're scared of, and how that impacts on our ability to set dreams and goals. And then thirdly, how we understand systems to work. Our own system, our own decision making, population systems, transformation systems, etc. And to an extent, my hypothesis is that we see all of these things in a uniform way. Time in a straight line, utility, and I explain that, prospect theory, in a linear way, and we kind of believe that all things are Gaussian or uniform, but they're not. So let me start with time, and it's quite remarkable that one of the central bits of research that comes out of anywhere about successful people, successful organizations, is the idea that time is short. Successful people tend to be very urgent. They know there isn't that much time. And the question, of course, I think is why? Why is it that most people, many people, think they're going to live forever, right? I tell you, we've hired tens, not tens, we hired 10,000 people at Discovery, and I can tell you thousands have come through and thousands have left. And I've worked with them and I've spoken to them, and for some reason people feel that life is forever. If you say to people, you know, will you achieve greatness? Invariably, people say yes. Have you got greatness in you? They say yes. And then you say, what are you waiting for? And for some reason people think that they're going to live forever. It's a massive, massive cognitive error. And the question is why? So let me give you my theory, and it's kind of very simple. My sense is that as you get older, time gets shorter, right? I've yet to find anyone who disagrees with that. No matter who you are, you feel the time gets shorter. I'll tell you why I think it is, because kind of time is a linear quality, right? But the way you experience it is kind of how long you've been here. So when you're a year old, time is 100% of your life, you agree? 1 year is 100% of your life. When you're 2 years old, 1 year is 50% of your life. You follow my logic? When you're 3 years old, time is 1 year is a third of your life, 33%. When you're 50 years old, 1 year is 2% of your life. You're following, I'm worried if you don't get this very basic mathematics, right? As you get older, time gets shorter because you feel time based on how long you've been here. Does that make sense? I've never met anyone who tells me that time is getting longer. And we kind of fool ourselves, you know, it's been a very busy year, I don't know what's going on, it's, you know, etc., etc. But I'm telling you, you're fighting the mathematics. As you get older, time gets shorter. You know, it's quite amazing. I have 3 children, 18 to 24. I become like a doting parent. I tell everyone the story. My wife at 50 fell pregnant. It's quite remarkable. We had a baby 6 weeks ago, right? Now I'm frantic about this little guy because he's moving through time much slower than I am. You follow? Every day for him is an eternity. For me, it's like that. So I went to work this morning. I came home this evening. He's like gone through he's gone through he's 6 weeks old, so 142 of his life. You follow my drift? In fact, 1 day for him is longer than 1 year for me, if you trust me. And I believe that to be true. So the central question is, how much of your life have you lived? And that's a mistake people make. They tend to think they kind of haven't lived much of it, they're going to live forever. So assuming you're 40 years old, I hope this works. Assuming you're 40 years old, you might say, listen, I'm 40, I'm going to live to 80, right? Forget the mathematics, that's my assumptions. How much of your life have you lived? You're following this fairly simple idea. 1 plus 1 to how long you've lived, 40 divided by 80, right? I've lived 50% of my life. That's kind of how people feel. I've got a long way to go. Plenty to do, but it's a mistake. If you follow my mathematics, that's not how you calculate that. How you calculate it is differently. When you're 1 year old, the year counts 1, you follow? When you're 2, counts a half, plus a third, all the way to 1 over 40. That's the numerator in my mathematics, right? Divided by the same thing to 1 over 80. That's how long you've lived. Now the question is, what do you get? Well, I hate to tell you, you get about 85%. So put differently, if you're 40 years old and you follow what I'm saying, you're not halfway through your life, you're 85% the way through your life. Let me just give comfort to people of all ages. I love talking about this because no matter how old you are, whether you're 40 or 70 or whatever, you're near the end. That's how it works. You don't think that way, but I'm telling you it is true. I tell this anecdote that always stuck with me. My daughter, I remember, she was at nursery school, fantastic teacher. We bumped into her a few years ago, this teacher. I had a long chat to her. This is a nursery school teacher. My daughter now is at university. She never recognized the person. I said, don't you know who this person is? Hasn't a clue. Right now, I can tell you, I'm not sure. She's a very bright girl. She's got a memory better than me. She can't remember this woman. You know why? Because it was a lifetime ago for her, right? For me, it was like this. Time just moves differently. So let me show you a table, if you follow what I'm telling you. The table looks like this. That's real time. If I stood on the side of a road with a stopwatch and timed you, that's kind of what you think. At 40 years old, you're 50% of your life. You follow? If you go through my approach, you get this kind of perceived time. At 50 years old, you're 85% of your life. You can see how quickly you're burning time. So let me put it down graphically for you, if I can do that. Sorry, let me just show you this. What's really upsetting is you kind of 59% through your life on my scale when you're 10 years old. Isn't that depressing? I tell you it's true. I'm haunted by this issue. And I'm haunted as I get older because I feel it. I know it to be true. Time is running out. As I said before, at 40, 50, 85% through your life. Let me tell it to you graphically. This is the kind of hypothesis I laid out. You think that time is linear, it's a straight line, but it's not. It's logarithmic. It looks like that. You kind of, sorry, this is a bit, you following me? Let me start again. I think that all of these slides are slightly different. So let me put it down for you graphically. I think the kind of standard hypothesis people make is that time is linear, and that's how they see it. It's a straight line. At 0, they've lived 0 of their life. At 40, they've lived 80% of their life, 85% of their life, and so on. The question is, if you want to leave a legacy, when will you do it? You'll do it during your career, say 25 to 65, you follow the shaded area. You may think that that's kind of 50% or so of your life, but it's not. Oh, these are really terrible. Let me try and, you follow me, because I'm having difficulty understanding it myself. I'm saying to you that your opportunity to leave a legacy is during your career, now, in these years that you work. It isn't shown there, but my sense of it is if you work it out on a linear basis, the percentage of your life that you would imagine is during your career is about 50%. But in fact, time looks like this. It's not linear, it's logarithmic. You burn it very quickly, and then you kind of asymptote to death. That's what happens, right? So if you work it out on my scale, I'd like to have shown it out to you, only for the mathematically minded. It's the integral of 1 over x dx if you work it out quite simply, right? It's logarithmic. But what you'll find is that you burn time quickly, and you only have 19% during that career that you kind of think is forever. So my sense of it is that time is shorter than you think, and you just don't have time to get going. Research will show, it does show, that people that are successful, organizations that are successful, don't have patience. If you want to leave a legacy, you have to do it now. One of the linearities that I'm sure Martin and his team and Vickers will tell you about is kind of a cognitive area about compound interest and the need to save when you're young. If you don't, you compound that on top of this and you get really difficult issues. So the first barrier to common things, right? So you buy a car, you get utility, positive or negative utility, value, you follow what I'm saying, right? And the question is, how do you perceive utility? Now there's a lot of work on this, and in fact I think intuitively, as I said, we tend to think that the joy from things and the losses from things is linear. You follow? The more you get something, the more value you get out of it. You buy your first car, gives you value. You buy the second car, it gives you value, and the more positive gains that you get, the more utility you get out of this particular good. On the downside, when you lose something, you get a negative utility, and that has pain for you, it has loss, right? We tend to think the more that we lose things, the more loss we'll feel, right? But that's not true. And the work that Kahneman did, that he actually won the Nobel Prize for, showed that in fact, what the utility curve looks like is kind of an S shape. What happens is, when you get something that's positive, you get value out of it, but the more of it you get, the incremental value is less. You following? So if you have a week of leave, it's very, very pleasant and fantastic. 2 weeks is not quite double as joyful. You follow? 3 weeks isn't 3 times. As you get more of something, it starts to asymptote. So on the positive side, you get more and more utility, but it bends downwards. And so you get this kind of asymptotic curve. What Kahneman found that's quite remarkable, I hope you can see it fairly clearly on this curve, is that when it comes to loss, the shape of the curve is much steeper on the down. Can you see that? I hope you can follow my mathematics. So to the right are gains, to the left are losses, up is the value you get, and down is the loss you feel. You follow? So let me go through it again. On the right hand side, as you gain more of something, be it annual leave or a motor vehicle, whatever it is, you get more and more value out of it. But it slows down over time and asymptotes. But the key issue that Kahneman found is that when you experience loss, it's a much steeper decline. You feel loss much more than you feel gain. It also tends to asymptote. But the reality, for some reason, whether we code it that way from an evolutionary perspective or not, the truth of it is that we feel loss worse than we are excited by gain. We are more motivated by potential loss than we are by potential gain. right? We don't know why that's the case. That's just how humans are coded. It's a fundamental finding in how we make decisions, and I'll tell you why now. So there are many ways to kind of, sorry, that hopefully makes it better. You can see for a gain of X, you get a certain value. For a loss of X, you get a much deeper loss. Can you see that? I hope that's clear. So for some reason, we kind of coded in this way that makes us more motivated by potential loss than by potential gain. There are many studies on this. Sorry, I'm really having trouble here. There are many studies on this. One that I've often quoted actually comes out of one of the American economic journals. Actually looked at golf. I'm not a golfer, but it's a fantastic study. It's a lot more scientific than you think. I've given this talk elsewhere, and I was bombarded by golfers who tell me you haven't a clue what's going on in golf. You're talking crap, excuse my language. This is very sound in every way. What the study did is it looked at golf, because golf is in fact a very interesting sport. It has a particular goal, right? The goal is par. You agree? When you play a hole of golf, when you play around with golf in a particular hole, there's a certain number of strokes that you have to get the ball in the hole right, and that is par. So the question is, when you look at people putting on the green for a par, what they're putting for is to try and achieve the goal. And the hypothesis that these authors looked at the PGA circuit and tried to work out whether professional golfers putted better for a par or for a birdie, right? Now they adjusted all the covariates, how far the ball is from the hole. I had one golfer tell me this is nonsense because when you're putting for a birdie, probabilistically you're further from the hole. Trust me, read the paper, I'll send it to you. The simple issue is, do you putt better for a birdie or for a par? Now why is that important in the context of prospect theory, utility theory? Simply put, when you're putting for a birdie, it's a potential gain. Do you agree? You drop a shot. When you're putting for a par, you're putting against a potential loss. If you miss it, you got one above par. And the amount of data in the professional golfing circuit was sufficient to allow these people to actually ascertain, do people putt better for par or for birdie? And what they found was incredibly compelling, as I think you can see. They analysed 2.5 million putts, and they found that golfers, professional golfers, putted dramatically better for par than they did for birdie. Because when they're putting for a par, they're scared of a loss. Now it's an interesting study in the fact that you would imagine that golfers at that level, it's kind of almost perfection. You're not going to try much harder. These are not guys who are slacking off at all. No matter how hard we try, we always do better when we're avoiding a loss, we're trying to get a gain. Now why is that relevant in the context of personal transformation? I'll tell you why. Because for some reason as we get older, we stop setting goals. We stop setting dreams. There's no reason why we do it, we just do it. When we're young and small, we have all these unrealistic goals and we set them out there, whatever. As we get older, we don't set goals, we don't kind of have dreams. I'll ask you, I'm not sure if that's true, I hope I'm not sounding patronizing here. Do you have goals? Most people I talk to don't. Now, the question is, why is it relevant? I'll tell you why. Because when you set a goal, you've got something to lose. You follow? As soon as you set a goal, you kind of fear, what if I don't achieve it? I tend to think it's anecdotal, but I tend to think that's one of the reasons why people don't set goals. They're scared of the loss. It's much safer not to have goals, right? As soon as you set a goal, you kind of become uneasy. What if I don't make it? What if I tell people that's what I'd like to achieve, but I don't? I hope I don't sound infantile here, but it is pretty serious stuff. I'll tell you this, if we built Discovery on setting goals all the time, and I don't mean earnings goals, and that comes obviously with being an organization that's publicly traded, etc. We have to do that kind of work. But setting bold, aspirational goals. So we started out many years ago. We set a goal of being the best health insurer in South Africa. I mean, beside the fact that you couldn't be a health insurer, legislation changed, etc., etc., I would argue we achieved it. I remember taking our staff and our people through that idea. Today we have a goal of being the best insurer globally by 2018. It's an incredibly audacious goal. I can tell you now, I've told it to our stakeholders, I've told it to shareholders, I've told it at analyst presentations. They think I'm a complete idiot, right? Which publicly traded CEO would set a goal out that you're likely to miss? It's like taking a rope and throwing it over a tree next to you, right? They're going to hang you with this particular goal. But I want to tell you, all of our people at Discovery are inspired by this. They're motivated by it. I spend a lot of my day working around how we deconstruct it. Our board has actually worked through what it means in terms of return on capital, value of new business, social impact through vitality. Every single aspect we've tried our best to deconstruct. It's a remarkable thing. You know, we did some work with Sir Dave Brailsford, the head of the Sky cycling team that won the Tour de France. He gives an amazing story about how you won the Tour de France. And his insight is actually quite simple. Every cyclist in the world wants to win the Tour de France. What he did with the Sky team is he took that goal and he deconstructed it, right? Forget about the Tour de France. It's too big a goal. Forget about that. Let's work about what you do on day 1, day 2, month 1, etc. You follow? And his art was actually to deconstruct this goal down to its components. And if you watch that Sky team for the Tour de France, they're a machine. They just don't make mistakes. They protected Chris Froome. They did everything it required to make sure they won the Tour. It's a remarkable story. I'll tell you my insight in business, because he gave a talk at one of our conferences. Insight I have is, in fact, I don't need to deconstruct our goal. You know why? Because businesses usually don't have goals. The art I think we have at Discovery is we actually set the goal. You follow? I don't really care how we get there, in a way. Just having the goal has inspired our people. Why is that? Because we now have something to lose. I'm worried about this goal. It's now 2015, we've got 3 years left. I'm under severe pressure. Every meeting I go to, people say to me, how are we going to get there? How are we going to achieve it? I can tell you, ask our people. You'll find at Discovery people know our purpose, and our values, and our goals. And that is what has created the fear of God in me. I'm scared of the loss. There's a real potential loss in that. And therefore, when you understand, I think, utility theory and prospect theory, and you understand being motivated by a potential loss much more than potential gain, you need to set goals. It's a key issue in transformation in anything you do. It's quite fundamental. I feel the same about our country. I agree very much with Vickers about we're kind of negative. Why are we negative? We don't have goals. We're told about 6% economic growth. That's what we've got to achieve. I don't find that to be a goal. That's a threat, right? That's not a goal. I don't know how to get there, you know. So I hope I don't sound patronizing in any way, but I tell you this, in your own lives, in your own careers, I think you do have to set goals in any way, because I think it evokes loss aversion. And that is how we are coded. It's crucial. Let me turn to the last thing I want to mention about how systems work, how population systems work. And this is kind of my sense of things, but I read a fantastic book about cognitive errors. The one error that this academic went about trying to find out is the error of uniformity, right? Whenever we hear about 1% of the people control 80% of the wealth, we're horrified. We're offended by it, and rightly so. It's not right. We hear about, one website gets all the traffic, one company, Apple, gets all the revenue. It kind of feels offensive to us, right? Now, why is that? I'll tell you why. Because for some reason we coded to think that systems need to be either uniform or Gaussian. You know what I mean by Gaussian? Bell-shaped. We taught at university that virtually every distribution in the world is a normal distribution, right? Helping my son in matric with his maths, he's kind of been told everything is Gaussian. I said to him, I've got bad news for you. Nothing is Gaussian. It's nonsense, right? So the truth is we have some sense of fairness in us that one thing is to be uniform or bell-shaped. And the bell-shaped distribution, right, I hope I'm not talking, I'm not boring the hell out of you, but in a bell-shaped distribution, in a normal distribution, a Gaussian distribution, the mean and the average are the same. They're in the middle. You follow? 70% of the distribution falls around the mean, one standard deviation from the mean, and the system is in equilibrium. That's the shape. You follow? The problem is that virtually nothing has that shape. The only things that have that shape are natural, unrelated things. If you look at the height of people, you'll find that men are on average, unfortunately I'm to the left, I shouldn't choose this particular example, but you'll find an average of, 5'10", you follow, and 70% are between one standard deviation. Look at IQ. The average is 100, the standard deviation is 15, so 70% of people are between 85 and 115. You follow me? Simple. But the truth is those are only things that are distributed, that kind of independent natural phenomena. How we're born with an IQ. Any system where you have interdependence is never distributed in a Gaussian way. How it is distributed is according to sorry, I actually have spoken about this. How it is distributed is according to an Italian economist called Pareto. That's how most things look. It's known as kind of the Pareto distribution, 80-20, power laws, you follow? In this kind of distribution, kind of the average is much higher than the median. In this distribution, the tail to the right drives the system. And you will find that this is pervasive. I can tell you. Anything you look at, looks like this. So you look at health insurance claims, it looks like this. 20% of the people, of the sickest people on the extreme right, consume 80% of the claims. You follow? You'll find that if you look at wealth systems, no matter what you look at, you'll find that there's a small bunch of people that for some reason have captured wealth, and you get a small percentage that somehow have all the wealth. If you look at the size of cancer tumors, no matter what you look at, you will find the 80-20. It's not really 80-20, but it's kind of, you follow me, it's a power law. Small group control the rest, right? Now, I hate to tell you this, I'm not advocating its morality, I'm telling you it's true. You can stand on your head, that's how the world looks, right? It is pervasive. I'll tell you what's also interesting about it, it's incredibly stubborn. No matter what you do, you cannot change this distribution. So if you think about Gini coefficients, income distribution in countries, you'll find that no matter what social system is imposed, you always get this. So if you've got America, the market economy, you know that America, you probably know this, America has a lower Gini coefficient than China, which had a communist socialist economy until the last 20 or 30 years. So whether you impose communism or you impose capitalism, a small group of people somehow control the wealth. If it's a fair economy, you hope that those people do it through merit. If it's a corrupt economy, they do it through rent-seeking and oligarchs. It doesn't matter. You follow what I'm saying? But you get the power laws happening. And then the third thing about it that's remarkable is that it's recursive, as we call it in statistics. It's an amazing thing, this you all follow me, I'm kind of statistically minded, so I can talk about this thing as if it's a beautiful painting. I don't bore the hell out of you, but the last quality of it is that it is recursive. What that means, it's amazing. If you cut pieces of it away, it has the same shape, right? So if you think about health insurance claims, we know 20%, the sickest 20% in the right-hand part of the tail consume 80% of the money. You follow? What's amazing, if you look at that tail, at the sickest 20%, and you take them, you know how they look. They're also in a Pareto distribution. The sickest of those people consume 20% of what the sickest 20% consume 80% of what they're claiming. You follow? And if you take the 20% sickest of those people, you keep getting little Pareto distributions, smaller and smaller in the tail. It's a remarkable thing. So it's kind of pervasive, I can tell you. It's remarkably stubborn and it's recursive. So the idea that things are uniform or Gaussian don't happen in our world, right? It's a cognitive error. It is a cognitive error. So what does this mean? It's actually it's a wonderful finding. I'll tell you why. Because what it means, my slides are kind of all over the place. What it means is that most systems have this power law applying to them. Now, if they didn't, if the world was Gaussian or normal, it's a system in equilibrium. The only way you can change it is to shift the whole thing. Do you follow? The only way to kind of take the average and make it higher is to shift everything. Because it's got to keep that shape. You follow what I'm saying? But if you've got a power law, how power laws work, instead of having to shift the whole thing, all you have to do is kind of play in the tail. You follow what I'm saying? The system is kind of controlled in the tail, not in total. It's actually a wonderful finding. Why it's wonderful is because it means that individuals, and listening to your talk, it's exactly that. Individuals can make a difference. That's the beauty of this thing. To change a system, to change a country, doesn't require every person to change. And I think the most wonderful finding is to change your own life. Doesn't require you to change everything. It requires activity in the tail. You follow? It's as simple as that. In my own life, one day I woke up and said, I'm going to start discovery. That's a tail event. You do that, the world was never the same. Right? One day, for some reason, Oscar Pistorius shot his girlfriend. That's a negative tail event. No matter what he achieved, no matter what he did, no matter how the system of his life looked, that event changed everything for him. And I think that's the strength of how systems work. They're not controlled in total. They're controlled kind of in the tail. And to an extent, I think, and I kind of keep trying to live this hypothesis, that I think that work in the tail, there's nothing more interconnected in your own life. Work in the tail somehow can drive you dramatically, and that's a remarkably powerful thing. So when people think about changing, improving, whatever it might be, and I don't mean in an infantile way, I often think it's too daunting, it's not possible. I'm going to change everything, but you don't have to do that. You only have to work on the tail. And so to an extent, what I hope I haven't spoken for too long, what I wanted to say tonight is that I think personal growth, my view, and this is my observations, I'm not giving you anything patronizing, I'm simply saying that I think as human beings, for some reason, we make mistakes about thinking that the world is linear when it's not. We make the tragic mistake of thinking that time is forever. It isn't, it's logarithmic. We think about how we set dreams and goals, we don't, but we need to because it evokes loss aversion. And the potential loss is what motivates us. And then finally we think about how we change systems, whether it's transforming a country, transforming our lives, transforming a school, doing whatever it is. It requires work in the tail. It's not difficult, it just needs activity in the tail. I think that the ability to transform, to grow is, I think, simpler than people think, but it requires kind of undoing cognitive errors, and I think that's important. I've said enough. It's a real pleasure and an honor, Martin. Thanks for asking. I hope I've added some value. Thank you for listening.